but you get the idea. And in doing so, they have really exposed their approach to ridicule even among those who want the same political outcome. You've got people like Professor Judith Curry, who is a global warming alarmist at Georgia Tech, who says there's no question the data that the ClimateGate folks produced, used, doctored, and that the EPA relied on in this greenhouse gas endangerment finding, that it was obvious that it was misleading and that there's been a deletion of adverse data in terms of the conclusion they want. The only science here, folks, is political science. This isn't real science. To give you an idea of just how questionable the benefits of this course are, the EPA in its own documentation says that this will reduce the temperature of the Earth by something less than 2/100ths of a degree Celsius by 2100. Hang on for that one. And in front of Congress, under oath, the Senate specifically, Lisa Jackson noted that the difference they expect in global temperature is immeasurable in those 90 years. That means not measurable for those of you in Rio Linda or at the EPA. Do you think this kind of power needs to be reined in? I do. I do, and we're doing it in the Attorney General's office in Virginia and with allies in the Attorney's General offices across the country. We petitioned the EPA to reopen the hearings on the greenhouse gas endangerment finding. They refused to do that. And our reason was there's all this new information since you closed the hearings. This is charming and very EPA. They issued a 360-page document rejecting our petition that included over 50 citations to, you guessed it, new information that wasn't available when the public hearing and comment period was open. So they used all sorts of new information to say we don't need any new information. Only government can do this stuff legally, and I don't think they're doing it legally. That's why we're in court. So we are also pushing back on the federal government on other fronts. Virginia is a coal state. Like 18 others, I believe it's 18 others, we have exclusive authority to regulate the permitting of coal mines in Virginia. And the word exclusive has been declared by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals to mean exclusive. And I'm actually not kidding about that one. Again, that dictionary, so pesky to these federales. They just have such problems with Noah Webster. But they are trying, after 34 years of exclusivity under federal law, their own law gives Virginia this authority, and now they're trying to elbow us out from dealing with our own permits and coal miners and all the rest. And mind you, we want to keep Virginia clean, and we want to keep these lights on at the same time. And we certainly want to keep the internet stream running for you all. So, but that one advantage of suing the EPA and suing the federal government over health care is when I send them a letter that says, if you don't stop doing this, I'm going to sue you, they believe me. So that's good. We've also worked with Attorney General Alan Wilson of South Carolina on the, and over a dozen other attorneys general on the Boeing matter and NLRB. Well, why is this of such interest to Virginia? We're a right-to-work state. For those of you that don't know what that means, Minnesota is not. That means you can't be forced to join a union as a condition of employment to work in Virginia. Oh my gosh, freedom. And there are all sorts of problems with the NLRB's attack on Boeing. What they're trying to do is make moving from a union state to a right-to-work state coercion of union members, even though they've increased employment in Washington state. I mean, it's mind-boggling. But There's no shortage of zeal there. That matters to Virginia because if that's all it takes for coercion, no state will ever move or even grow. Let's face it, that's what Boeing's doing, growing their manufacturing from their base state to Virginia. We have union states who have their attorneys general supporting our effort to resist the NLRB's overstepping of its legal authority. Sensing a pattern here? Because they know that the logical decision, if you own a company, to make at the outset is don't ever go to that state. Don't get trapped. It's the new economic Roach Motel. You can get in, but you can't get out. And it's amazing America doesn't need that kind of economic hit right now. And I'll tell you all from non-right-to-work states, it is a huge economic advantage for us. We have a big leg up on you all in the economic competition between states, just because we enforce freedom in Virginia more than you do in your state. And I would urge you in your states to advance that cause. New Hampshire is on the verge of becoming the 23rd right-to-work state. It would be the first one. Virginia's the northernmost right-to-work state on the eastern seaboard. It'd be a real leap up to New Hampshire, but New Hampshire's kind of the logical place you'd think that might happen, and hopefully it will. They've got the majority, but can they override their governor? We'll see. We'll see. Freedom breaking out everywhere. Imagine that. And another example, I actually think this last one is the most egregious act, most brazen defiance of the rule of law of all of them. The FCC has voted for what they call net neutrality. And so, yeah, bloggers have any interest in that? So the first thing you know is it isn't neutral. They're very helpful about that sort of thing. Remember being in first grade and it was opposite day? Well, every day is opposite day when they're naming regulations out of this administration. The reason that this is the most egregious of them all is because a year ago, in 2010, not 1910, in 2010, the DC court that has jurisdiction over all the agencies, all these appeals go right to DC Circuit Court, ruled that the FCC doesn't have the legal authority under federal law to regulate the internet, to do what they were doing. So they went back to work and thought, well, we think we do anyway. This is the most brazen of all because, they went into Arizona, they sued Arizona over their immigration enforcement law. All they had to do was not cooperate. They're good at that. But that wasn't good enough. They had to go in and beat up on a state. We got in to round up some other states to support Arizona. They have violated their own federal laws numerous times. These things I'm rattling off to you, the NLRB, the Office of Surface Mining, the EPA, over and over. And then they also have no respect, clearly, for the U.S. Constitution, which is why we're going to blows over the federal health care law. But now, in this one, they are showing utter disdain for the one institution in our constitutional system that's supposed to be the neutral referee of all these contests, the courts. Now, we all know certain judges aren't always neutral, but for the President of the United States and his administration to so completely and across the board attack the rule of law itself is unprecedented in our lifetimes.
Obama's a traitor!
That might have been a blogger. You guys are a little stronger with your adjectives, I notice. Which is, it's fun to read, it's fun to read. That is truly, it's hard to overstate the historical importance of that. And I want you to take that thought home with you when you think in terms of the federalism fights that we have going. We haven't had this much conflict, federalism conflict, since it went the other way, since states like mine, Virginia, were denying black citizens their rights to vote and civil rights under the color of state law. And then federalism worked the other way. Well, now it's us checking the federal government, and that's the way that the founders designed it. I was testifying before the Judiciary Committee a couple of months ago, and Congressman Nadler from New York asked me an interesting question. No, really, it was interesting. He said, look, you say that this case about liberty, not health care, but you also say that states can order you to buy health insurance, which is constitutional, what Massachusetts has done. It's not good policy, but it's constitutional. And he said, look, if it's just the states and not the federal government, what's the difference? It's 6 of one, half dozen of another. He said, Congressman, when the founders set up the federal government, it wasn't the states they were worried about. And boy, were they right. Boy, were they right. So look, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for the fight that you carry on in the public arena. The long-term battle here is one of changing hearts and minds. You've heard that phrase before, I'm sure. But one of the beauties of the Tea Party is they're educating people about the Constitution, about history. A lot of other people are just doing it independently on their own, and many of you are involved in that effort, and I absolutely appreciate that. I want to leave you with a quote that I'm sure most of you know. It's from Ronald Reagan, and it's worthwhile to remember now in these times and in your role. Freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children don't do that. And our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. Thank you all very much. God bless you.